Thank you for coming out this snowy Sunday afternoon. We're hearing about some flights being delayed, and we know the roads are kind of slippery, so thank you for coming. My name is Anna Duff, and I am a trustee with the Prince George Public Library, and I have the great honor of having been the chair of the library for the past 3 years. I also have the great delight of leading us through today's afternoon of ceremonies and awards. It's great to be back this year for the second year at the Prince George Conference and Civic Center for this time of community building, for some recognition and encouragement. Each year, the Prince George Public Library Board hosts these awards receptions to celebrate and recognize contributions to the preservation and promotion of local history, for both local history but also regional history. And we consider regional to be anything north of Williams Lake up to the BC border, to the BC-Yukon border. And when we think of our region now, it might be that our hearts and minds turn to the people of Tumbler Ridge and the Peace region. And while we can all have complex feelings and emotions about this and the tragedy that occurred in their community, we can mourn, we can grieve, and we can also be open to noticing the genuine good that people are doing in the face of unimaginable hurt, even when it's so hard. And in these times of pain and sorrow, we should recognize those who are doing what they can to support their community. Some of these altruistic actions may be shared in the media now, giving us opportunity to respect and grasp onto them now as we process our emotions in the short term. One such action is our friends at the Tumbler Ridge Public Library, who are intentionally staying open because they see the need of offering normalcy during this time to their community. And so we are greatly appreciative and admiring what they're doing there. And while I was preparing for this, I was reading on the Tumbler Ridge newspaper website, and someone had submitted a poem there. And just a little bit of it says that, for grief, it is heavy, yes, it is true, but shared between us, it splits in two. And so for us, as we think about this time as a community, as we're here to gather and recognize the history of Northern BC, we often celebrate the good things, but we can also share in the hardship, and that makes it just a little bit lighter as we go through this. And so I thank the author of that poem, Mariah Myberg, for posting that and sending that into the Club of Ridge. And it was a joy to be able to read that and to share that with you this afternoon. And while that was published now, there's other actions of care and support that might be revealed in the future, maybe through a medium of a publication that we will carry record of this in a moment of our history. Our mission at the Prince George Public Library is to build community resilience by creating welcoming and inclusive spaces for every person to read, connect, and share. And this is part of why we're here today, to build broad and local community resilience. Today and always, we want to connect, and we're looking to share, and to deepen our sense of place in books, in articles, in songs, and the local histories of our region. And the work that people make to put in effort to create songs and written record of what has happened in Northern BC shows that our history is a dynamic subject worthy of serious attention on its own terms. For myself, often in my personal and professional life, I think about the sense of place and how important it is, and how quite literally it is our common ground. And this place is what unites us all. And it helps us connect with those who are beside us, either at these tables right now, as we're browsing books, or as we're learning about our region and supporting our neighbors. It is appropriate that we acknowledge those who have, and as we think about this and who our neighbors are, it is appropriate that we acknowledge those who have stewarded these lands for generations before us. We gratefully recognize that we are presenting these awards today and every year on the unceded traditional land of the Great Lakes First Nation, on whose land we live, work, play, and offer library services. We recognize that the history of human activity on these lands in our region is often to a large extent the history of the Great Lakes and other Indigenous peoples. It is now my great pleasure to welcome Please may Elder Phyllis Seymour to come forward and provide us with a welcome.
Masi, Hattie. My name is Phyllis Seymour. I'm from Clayton Nation. Before I begin, I would just like to say, where I want to send our thoughts and our prayers to Tumble Ridge, to the parents that lost a child, and to the little girl that's still fighting for her life in the Children's Hospital in Vancouver. I just want to say that our thoughts and our prayers are with each and every one of them in that community. I would just like to welcome each and every one of you here today on our unceded traditional territory for the 41st annual Jeanne Clarke History Awards. I would just like to say congratulations to all the recipients that will be receiving an award today for all their contributions, for the history, for their local history, and for all their hard work and dedication. On behalf of our Chief and Council, our youth, and our elders, and our community members, we welcome each and every one of you here today. Masicho, have a good evening.
Thank you, Elder Seymour, for sharing those reflections and for welcoming us here this afternoon. Before we go any further, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge any dignitaries who we have joining us today. So we have Councillors Ron Palillo and Garth Frizzell joining us, and Councillor Frizzell is also a trustee on the Prince George Public Library Board. And along that, we also have some of my fellow trustees. We have Louise Hanson, Bash Baggy Cook, and Louise Spooner all over here. You guys want to give a wave to you? And we also have the joy of welcoming UNBC Interim President and Vice Chancellor Bill Owen this afternoon. And I'd also like to take a moment, as I do every year, to thank Rogers and Jonathan Valoroso for being here to record this ceremony. It goes live on the Rogers YouTube channel, and it's just a different way of keeping record of what we're celebrating today, the conversations that we're having, and the people that we're honoring. They do this for us every year, which is really incredible. And they also take the time to put together some video submissions that we get from the authors. So later on this afternoon, we'll have some videos, and that's all thanks to Rogers for doing that for us. Now, Jeanne Clarke. She was a former chair of the Prince George Public Library, and she had a crucial role in establishing the local history committee at the library. And beyond that, she also helped to set up the Prince George Public Library's local history collection. After her passing, the library board established the Jeanne Clarke Local History Awards as a way to continue her legacy. And today we have two award categories, the Service Award and the Publication Award. Established in 1985, the Service Award recognizes outstanding contributions by either an individual or a group in the area of local history. 8 years later, in 1993, the board decided to add a Publication Award category to the Jeanne Clarke Local History Awards. This is so that authors can be recognized for producing an important work of a new publication in the area of local history. The objective of these awards this year and every year is to increase interest in local history, to highlight the PGPL's role in preserving and promoting local history, and to recognize individuals and groups of people who have come together to commemorate what we've gone through and our history. Although the primary goal is to recognize the history of the Prince George and surrounding area, as I mentioned, we also do kind of extend those boundaries a little bit more, and so we cover all of northern BC. when we're thinking of who's eligible for these awards. As a board, we will continue to honor Jeanne Clarke's legacy, ensuring that we acknowledge, promote, and celebrate the history and enduring culture of this area. And we have the pleasure of having some of Jeanne Clarke's family with us today. If you're here and related to Jeanne Clarke, will you please stand up? And beyond that, instead of just seeing them and acknowledging them that way, I get the joy of welcoming Heather Henderson, one of Jeanne Clarke's daughters, up to the stage.
Public speaking has never been my forte, so I apologize. I have to kind of read as partially. And year 3, I am getting a bit better. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm always honored and full of gratitude when I get to come here each year and celebrate so many incredible people, both for their service and their contributions to the historical record of this area. And I get to reflect on how touched and honored my mom would be that this work that was so important to her continues today. 2026 marks 100 years since my mother was born in South Fort George. Her parents both worked in public service, and she and her 2 sisters lived a very typical life: school, outdoor play, volunteering. As high school ended, World War II broke out, so post-secondary studies were not in the cards. She married, had 3 children, and stayed at home while we were young. My mom was friendly, kind, and always willing to lend a hand. She also loved reading, sports, and had a great sense of humor. She went to work outside the home in the mid-60s. Her favorite jobs were her library gigs at BGSS and the School District 57 Resource Center. She joined the library board to help make her love of reading accessible to everyone. One of the first hurdles was convincing City Council that a new, larger building was necessary. Not a short or easy battle, but success was achieved. She would be absolutely thrilled to see it thriving 45 years later. A more minor mission involved having a special little area to house the local history collection and to help it grow, separate from the general history, easy to access. What has transpired over the last 41 years since she passed away is truly mind-boggling. During a recent cleaning spree in my basement, I came across 2 special editions the Citizen had compiled. Fittingly, one on 70 years of Braille and one on 100 years of the history of the area from 1914 to 1984. I hope I'm not the only person in Prince George who still has this type of thing safely in the basement for future generations. Anyway, but there's genetics at work, and this is another reminder of how passionate my mom was about local history. We were always reading something, but our daily favorite was the newspaper. We discussed stories over meals, while doing chores. The dishes always seemed to go faster when you had a great story to talk about. My mom saved memorable stories, hence my basement. And when I went to school in Vancouver, I received weekly letters with several clippings included. When I got married and moved to Terrace, I continued to get letters with clippings included. It was truly a constant. We also subscribed to the Vancouver Sun, but it was much less prominent in discussions and clippings. My mom really loved local history in any form she could get it. And so, to Paul and the library staff, to Anna and the library board, the committed volunteers, and the wonderful authors who contribute their work. And lastly, the community members who come together annually to recognize all these people and their fascinating publications. A huge thank you.
Heather, and how amazing to see some old Citizen newspapers there in your hand. I think you might be kind of popular after this, but a lot of people would think to get a chance to read those. I know I might be one of them. Thank you for sharing that about your mom, and the importance too of what you were saying about how she was sharing what was happening in the city of Prince George while you were away at school, while you were in Paris. And that's part of what we're here to do too, right? To think about what's happening in our local community. How are we sharing that and how are we learning from it? So that's a trend that your mom started in a big way. And it's neat to see how she continued that in a personal way in your own family life too. And now, as it kind of seems to be a trend over the past couple of years, we get to have a musical performance this afternoon. So I am really grateful for the chance to welcome Mike Gucci, a 10-time award-winning country music recording artist and author, to the stage in just a few moments. Mike Gucci, is an exceptionally talented artist, as is many of his family members. And as I was doing a little bit of research for this, I actually realized that this year we had his sister perform for us. So not saying that we only do family members for musical presentations, but we're 2 out of 2, so we'll see what next year brings, I guess. His sister had received the Service Award in 2022, and this year Mike is a finalist for the Publication Award for his recently released album and memoir titled Shattered Glass. This publication is a walkthrough of life's triumphs and hardships, encouraging us all to find our strength and the importance of never giving up. Please join me in welcoming Mike to the stage for an acoustic performance.
Well, hello there. Thank you so much for the introduction. It was a long night last night. Went out to the Blackbird Community Hall and did a fundraiser, and we had a wonderful crowd show up. It was a sold-out show, and we had a dinner and music and had a really great time. Thank you to the Jeanne Clarke Awards for putting me up for a nomination for the Publication Awards. I'm going to actually sing you the title of my book, my new book. It's called Shattered Glass. I held on to you, you let go. Ever since that day, I've been dying slow, like a house with no lights on the street. That's where you left me. Like shattered glass, broken jagged pieces of can't you see? I'm so picking up what's left of you and me. Oh, that window of forever we look through together, like scattered on the floor like shattered glass. Lie scattered on the floor like shattered glass. Like shattered glass. Like shattered glass.
Thank you, Mike, for that. I think it's always really amazing when people are willing to share their gifts and those talents. So thank you for writing the song, writing the book, and then also sharing with us live with that. As I mentioned before Mike performed, he is one of the nominees for the Publication Award. And so the Publication Award is open to nonfiction books, biographies, historical fiction, or any publication that improves the appreciation and understanding of local history, and it has to have been published within the past 2 years. What we do is, sometimes there's a lot of things for us to read, so the library board has some volunteer readers, and we have a local history committee, and together they spend many hours learning, reading, reviewing, but then also discussing the nominated publications. And the Publication Award recognizes excellence in the publication for the promotion and preservation of local and or regional history. And so on behalf of the Local History Committee, I would like to allow the nominees of the 2026 Jeanne Clarke Publication Award to introduce themselves and their publications in their own words. So I'll ask you to turn your eyes to the screen, and we're going to have a series of short videos there.
I'm Jonathan Swanger, one of the historians at the University of Northern British Columbia, and author of the notorious Georges, Crime and Community in British Columbia's Northern Interior, which is one of the nominees for this year's Jeanne Clarke Award. Near the end of the book, I tell a story of the juvenile delinquency panic in Northern British Columbia, and in particular in Prince George, a panic that was occurring across North America. When an incident in Burnaby attracted the attention of the local newspaper, the reporter rushed out and interviewed the mother whose children had been robbed of their lunch money. And after describing the event, she summarized it with, "It's just like that Prince George business." And that indeed is what the book is about, that Prince George business. The repetition of the idea that the Prince George and its earlier communities, South Fort George and Fort George, were notorious. They were lawless, they were boisterous, they were boozy, and they carried that reputation throughout the 20th century. And thus the book is my attempt to understand the origins of that reputation and whether or not, in fact, the historical evidence supports this description of the Georges as drunken revelry, a city populated with con men and scarlet women and sharp practices. In point of fact, the Georges were no different than the rest of British Columbia, yet despite that, the reputation continues to echo throughout the years. And thus, my book is really just a testament to the idea that history is really about thinking about the present, understanding that the present is a product of decisions made and not made in the past, and that we do need to understand how the past constructs and echoes particular identities about what occurred and how that resonates in the present situation. So I hope you enjoyed the book and take an opportunity to leaf through the pages and take advantage of some of the rip-roaring tales that I've managed to unearth about the Georges. Thank you, and good luck to all the nominees.
Hello. Knots and Stitches is about the healing power of quilts, community, and adventure. I was in sad shape when I moved alone to a tiny cabin across the harbor from Prince Rupert in 1982. I had lost a baby before it was born, lost my health, my emotional stability, and my marriage. The saltwater women who lived in the cove befriended me and taught me how to run a boat, beachcomb for logs, and can salmon. I taught them to quilt. We made quilts communally, each woman adding to the design until it was finished. Quilting together created strong bonds of community and friendship that linked women around the harbor. Everything in my new life scared and exhilarated me. Stormy boat rides, getting lost in the fog, hiking the muskeg, wild parties, a new romance. My most precious belongings were a sturdy 14-foot skiff, my treadle sewing machine, and my dog Arlo. I grew stronger in body and spirit, soothed by the quiet forest and the nurturing sea. With a new partner, I spent the summers in a sailboat, exploring the wild north coast. But my friends were having babies and I could not. I felt a tumultuous mix of jealousy and grief with each baby quilt we made. Quilting with these women was very important to me, so as I stitched, I struggled with my feelings. Gradually, my envy and hurt dissipated, my yearning lessened, and my sense that I had other satisfactions and blessings grew. 40 years later, our greatly expanded circle of quilters now makes comfort quilts for friends who are ill or grieving. We believe in the healing power of quilts. I thank the Prince George Library for a chance to share my story. My friend and fellow quilter Lou Allison is attending today to represent me. Thank you.
Judith Ich, We Always Find a Way, Bringing the Chilcotin Title Case Home by Lorraine Weir with Chief Roger William. The Chilcotin title case was a 25-year battle in Canadian courts and the first case in Canada to result in a declaration of Aboriginal rights and title to a specific piece of land. This publication represents nearly a decade of interviews that share a community oral history of the case and centers around the tireless visionary power of Chief Roger William. As Weir states in the introduction, in the analogy I used to describe the book to contributors, Chief Roger's narrative is like the spine of a salmon, while the narratives by all other contributors are like its lateral bones and fins. Chief Roger's vision for this book was that it would be an act of restorative justice, sharing the stories of the Haiyagwatins in a way that would resonate with both Indigenous and non-Indigenous readers. Lorraine Weir, who worked as an oral history professor at UBC throughout much of the creation of this publication, was tasked with interviewing many people connected to the title case and recording their stories, which are now shared in this book. Chief Roger's final comments speak to the way the book is both a publication and an ongoing act. I hope that K'la'yudithich will spark more stories and inspire more Indigenous peoples and nations to have hope and move forward on their journeys towards recognition and strengthening their cultures. And I hope that non-Indigenous people who read this book will learn from our stories of what we have been through and be inspired by our fight for our Aboriginal rights and title, and for our lands, water, and resources.
I'm Mike Gucci, and I'm a member of Claytley Tenay, and was born and raised in Prince George. I'd like to thank everyone involved with the Jeanne Clarke Awards for having me this year, and it's a real honor to be recognized for writing my first book. It's a story of my life musically. It tells my musical journey from my early years, growing up in Prince George in a musical family, to going out on the road, traveling Western Canada with some friends from high school, to going to Nashville and recording world-class music and opening for the legendary George Jones. And everything in between. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors, and there's a lot of things that people don't really know about, someone in the life of entertainment. And I sort of talk about the ups and downs of that with my experience along the way. And I really hope you get a chance to read my memoirs in Shattered Glass. And again, I thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to coming to the community and sharing my music and my story a lot more in the future. Thanks a bunch.
My name is Jeff Minette. I'm the author of A Gentleman of Considerable Talent, William Brown and the Fur Trade, 1811 to 1826. This was published by Caitlin Press. It's a biography of a Hudson's Bay Company trader named William Brown. I've researched his story deeply in the archives of the Hudson's Bay Company in Winnipeg, and have used my research to tell his life and his story in the North. Brown came from Scotland in 1811. He worked for the Hudson's Bay Company over the mountains and came through the mountains in 1821. He then spent 5 years as the chief trader on Babine Lake. This is now called Old Fort. In 1826, he went home to Scotland and soon died, aged only 36. Brown was not an important man, not a leader of the HPC, not an explorer. He was just an ordinary man with considerable talent who lived in interesting times. He took part in many of the important events of the Hudson's Bay Company during this period. He did his best trying to find his way through life in a challenging time. He reminds us that our history is made up of ordinary people trying to do their best. Ever since I first visited Hazelton on the Skeena River in 1980, I have been fascinated by the stories of the North. I've been back many times, the last time last year doing research for another book. There is a richness to these stories that fascinates me. There's so much more to discover, so many more stories to tell. The Jeanne Clarke Award for Local History is important. We ignore history at our peril. It matters. In our world of alternative realities, facts do matter. Without them, we go blind into the world. We support facts with the best evidence we can find, and if new evidence or better researched facts changes the stories, then we must change our stories and our opinions accordingly. I want to thank the Prince George Public Library and the selection committee for the nomination. It's a great honour and very encouraging. I hope the books of all the nominees spread far and wide in the North and beyond to tell the stories of the North. I'm sorry I can't be with you today, but thank you very much for your nomination.
My name is Wayne McCoy. I'm a professional biologist and I studied wild horses in the Chilcotin for over 20 years, and through my working with First Nations and listening to old stories, I ended up writing a book called Wild Horses of the Chilcotin. I would very much like to thank the Prince George Library for nominating me for as a finalist for the second year in a row for the 2016 Clarke Awards. That's a real honor, and I wish best luck to whoever you pick as a winner. I have a reading from my book that I sort of thought would interest your audience, and I'll start by reading about a dream I had when I first arrived there to do field work. And of course, remember, I'm a bear biologist by profession, and when I got there, Steady Grizzly Bears, the horses sort of took over our ecological surveys, and this dream kind of pointed me away from bears and in the direction of horses that needed help. So here I go, and this is back in, I think, about 2001. On my first Chilcotin trip, I wrestled with my own negative feelings with any type of feral animal, including wild horses. But then I had a strange dream about a magic stone horse. In my technicolor dream world, I was on a solo journey, hiking along wild horse trails through a vast bunchgrass prairie to reach a legendary indigenous spiritual mountain called Silos. The man who turned to stone. In the local indigenous belief system, he was the guardian and protector of the Chilcotin horse nation. Along the way, I encountered a beautiful thorn horse blocking my path. That strange dream launched me into my own long ride into the wild horses, history, and survival. Thank you so much.
Going North, Memorabilia of Tourism in Alaska, Yukon, and Northern British Columbia by Stan Cohen. This book is a compilation of 50 years of writing about and collecting items of the varied histories of Alaska, the Yukon, and Northern British Columbia. Much of this has to do with the very large tourist business in the areas. The chapters reflect the history of the steamship companies, the airlines, the railroads, and the various means for vehicle movement between Canada and the mainland of the United States, plus histories of tourist towns and sites up to the present day. Between the covers, the reader will find a vast display of photos, brochures, postcards, menus, transportation schedules, and other means to lure the tourist north. The postcards range from the very colorful German printed cards of the early 1900s to the much more prolific so-called linen cards of the 30s and 40s. They give a good visual account of what the sites looked like at the time. So sit back and enjoy a nostalgic trip starting over 120 years ago with the end of the Klondike Gold Rush in the Yukon.
Recovering for me there as I turned on the microphone. So how great to see so many amazing publications be recognized and to hear the voices from their own authors describing it to us as we kind of understand what their works and their publications are about. Before I dive in, I'm just going to say one quick thing, that we have Books and Company outside, so if you want to be buying any of these publications to add to your own collections, you can visit the Books and Company table in the foyer afterwards. And because we had so many great nominations this year, we actually have 2 publication award winners. So I am really thrilled that we're able to honor 2 different authors with this, and we are so grateful that they spent the time and the dedication and really the mental energy of diving deep into these topics and figure out a way that they can share it with us and with the general public in a way that is interesting but stays true to the intent of the stories that they are telling. And so the first publication award winner is Jonathan Swanger. Congratulations.
I was raised prepared just in case. Otherwise, I'd be up here making an utter fool of myself, more so than usual. I'd like to thank Elder Seymour for her gracious welcome to what is the middle of First Nation Reserve number 1. There were 4 here in the region. And this, of course, was the one that eventually was bulldozed and all the houses burned once it was sold to the Grand Trunk Pacific. I'd like to start by expressing my thanks to the Jeanne Clarke Local Regional History Award Committee. First, for the honor of the nomination, and it is indeed an honor, and for having now been named this year's recipient. I would also like to acknowledge the support that was provided to me while I constructed Notorious Georges. Support from the University of Northern British Columbia, where I have a number of my colleagues here. I have the acting president here. I won't even look at him. The support that I received in particular from the Northern BC Archives at the University of Northern British Columbia in the library, the folks over at Exploration Place at Clayton Dene Memorial Park, the folks over at the Railway Museum, and out at Hubble Farm as well. I would be remiss not to thank Books and Company for all of their promotional efforts. I'm so pleased to see them here selling all the nominees. It's brilliant. I also want to thank the students for their labor. I turned doing research for this book into class projects. And the students then were engaged in the actual process of discovering the history of the Notorious Georges. And I also want to thank the Prince George Newspaper Database Project, created in part by the Prince George Public Library. That database is a monster, but you can't do local history without it, and it's an absolute wonderful resource. Receiving the Jeanne Clarke Award is especially gratifying because it's an acknowledgement that comes from the community that is at the heart of the Notorious Georges. While I have no illusions that I've gotten everything right, I nonetheless hope that there's enough between the covers to sustain future researchers, provide a base for them to build upon, and perhaps in time move beyond my efforts. In that, I hope the work proves to be a service to the community that has provided me and my family with so much. I also want to emphasize that the Clarke Award, with its attention to local and regional history, signals that Northern British Columbia and its people deserve to be taken seriously, and taken seriously on our own terms. As I argued in the book, it's all too easy to let overblown caricatures of Northern British Columbia, images typically constructed by others, to dominate our sense of the region. By encouraging local history, the Jeanne Clarke Award does us proud. It reminds us that ours is an important history, a history that informs the way that we have moved through time together. Local histories, and indeed our provincial history and our national history, are much more than just Canadian content. Rather, they're ways of understanding the strength and the distinctiveness of Canada, its diverse peoples, and the particular way we prefer to move through the world. And in ways that recent events have demonstrated, it shows just how special the communities of Northern British Columbia, and indeed our nation as a whole, truly are. And so for that, and much, much more, I couldn't be prouder to accept this year's Jeanne Clarke Award. Thank you again. Like it won't shine on my head.
as you're writing the book and maybe as you rallied a few students behind you to support, I was a student at UMBC, and I can understand the importance of having your students participate in things and the learning that they benefited from. So thanks for sharing that with us. And now, as I mentioned, we have 2 publication award winners today, and so I am thrilled to announce that the second publication award today is being given to Lorraine Weir and Chief Roger Williams for their book, La Latifah, We Always Find a Way, bringing the Chilcotin case home. So, Chief Roger Williams is unable to join us today, but we do have Lorraine here with us.
Thank you very much. First of all, let's pronounce the title. Okay? On your mark, get set. Schla. Schla. Judith. Ich. Let's do it again. Schla. Judith. Ich. Let's do it again. Schla. Judith. Ich. Schla. Judith. Ich. There, we can all do it. Yes? Your turn. 1, 2, and 3. Okay. For all of us who've been challenged with the title, it's quite simple. I think that, like all things involving profoundly different languages, profoundly different cultures, and in many ways profoundly different histories, those of us who are feeling a little outside the spectrum of the narrative stop at the title and get worried. In a sense, we're right to be worried. So I want to affirm the challenge of pronunciation. It was part and parcel of the decision that Roger and I made about entitling, if you will, the oral history that we created over 10 years of working together, and the whole community of Chilcotin. We decided on principle, and in line with the goals of Chilcotin Nation versus BC, the Chilcotin language, as it's called in English, Chilcotin is first. The challenge of figuring out how to pronounce what is really pretty simple once you get the hang of it is the first challenge for all of us colonizers, most of us in this room, in relation to the history that's being presented to us by 46 elders, Chilcotin community members, a very few allies, who, together with Chief Roger, me as the reporter, the editor, the project manager, all of us, chief cook and bottle washer, and editorial kinds of jobs, put together this narrative, not just as a story of part of northern BC. Indeed, I'm honored that the Jeanne Clarke Awards Committee decided to include a history of Chilcotin under the heading of Northern BC. But there we are with Wayne McRory's wonderful book about the horses, and so Chilcotin becomes sort of, we don't see it as a regional history. We don't see it as a national history. We don't see it as a Canadian history. We see it as Chilcotin history. We see it as a history of, from the beginning of time, the people, the land. We are the land, as Chief Roger expressed. We are the land. At the beginning of the book, we use an epigram from the great Chickasaw poet, novelist, Linda Hope. What happens to the people happens to the land. What is done to the people is done to the land. The history of colonization brought to Chilcotin people the Chilcotin War, the first rejection of settler craft and corruption. Settler attempts to make out of the land gold, to make out of the people slaves, or worse. And on to smallpox genocide, and on to residential school, and on to all of the travesties of the Indian Act, and all of struggles, represented in part by the title case itself. After all, why spend more than 25 years going through the settler court system if it wasn't the only way that Chief Roger and his people saw, having tried every other avenue to protect the land and the people, finally having to go through all three levels of the settler court system, bringing the elders as witnesses, as knowledge keepers, as the poets of their nation to BC Supreme Court, going all the way through the appeal court, and finally to victory, partial victory, but the first of its sort in Canadian history, in Supreme Court of Canada. So this history speaks, and these stories, because this book is a book of stories, and for Saugeen people, stories, Gwynedd, are medicine. This book is a book of medicine. It's a book of medicine to heal all of us, those on the receiving end of the violence of colonization, those who now bring to us the possibility of healing from what we have done. I speak as a colonizer. I speak as a fifth-generation survivor of the Irish family, as an Irish Canadian. I speak as someone who had the great, great, great privilege of working with the elders for 10 years, of being a student of the elders, being a student of Chief Roger, being a student of the community. I come back in a sense, I come forward with this book as witness of their teachings, of their commitment to be strong as Chilcotins, of their commitment to continue on the path of healing, of thriving, of developing further and further their own culture, their own language, their own knowledge, their own artistic traditions, their own economic survival and stability against extraordinary odds which continue to this day. So that's my quick overview of the book. It is very political, some will say. But what could be more political than the apartheid that we as colonizers created through the Indian Act? What could be more political than the history of British Columbia? What could be more political and more violent than the genocide, the smallpox genocide that reduced the community where I was invited to work and had the great privilege to work, reduced that community to 2% of its population. And I'm so grateful that 3 or 4 of the members of the family that did survive, that 2%, is well represented in the book. I'll never forget the moment when in the middle of listening to a story that was being shared with me by Elder Mabel Solomon, the late Elder Mabel Solomon, the penny finally dropped. That I was in the living room, in the home of one of the survivors, the direct line back, survivors' families of the smallpox. In a sense, we could say that of Indigenous peoples throughout BC. But this quite specifically, and quite in a quite focused way, in terms of those who bear the stories, those who share those stories, as I said in the beginning, as medicine, and those who continue through all of the legal activity that has been necessary, and far beyond that, to bear their culture, to witness their culture in the world. So, Unity, we always find a way, is the title. One of the other possible versions of translation for that title was one that the elders didn't approve of. It was, "We never give up." When I said, why don't we go with "we never give up," the elders said, "We don't speak in the negative." Given the history that I've just really very quickly summarized, isn't that amazing? We don't speak in the negatives. What do you mean you don't speak in the negative? You don't put that out in the world. You don't, so to speak, front-end load with the negative. You put it in the positive. It's one of many, many moments, hundreds of thousands of moments in the 10 years that I worked with the people who are this book, when my mind spun a little bit. My life was transformed a little bit. Not that I'm not still a settler, but I'm a settler who got taught by very great teachers. So I want to honor them. They wanted the ones who are still with us on this side, wanted to be with us today. I invited the elders to come, to sing, to speak, and to be their own inimitable presence, and perhaps share some stories. And they said they would love to come, but it's so cold in Hindi. It's too cold to travel. But worse than that, they were very concerned because the water lines in their homes would freeze. And much as they wanted to come to Prince George, they didn't know it was going to snow here, but much as they wanted to come to Prince George, they had to stay home so that the water would freeze. So the spirits of those elders are with us. The spirits of many other elders are with us, but they're in the spirit world. I'm going to read their names now so that the elders who contributed so much, not only to this book, but to their community, to the history, to the legal history, know in the spirit world that we're thinking of them too. Elder Yubil Lulwa, Ivor Denaway Myers, my great teacher for this book, Elder Martin Quilt, Laura Sita, Mabel Solomon, Cecile William, Eileen Sammy William, Chief Roger's mother, Marvin William, Mabel Williams. In the spirit world now, more than half of the elders who recorded, contributed stories for this book. We are so, so fortunate that through sheer chance, I started recording when we did. This book came about by chance. I went visiting in August 2012. It occurred to me that I knew an awful lot about the case. I'm fascinated by legal history. I'd read my way through the trial transcripts, and I knew the case well. But I didn't know the land. I'd never visited Peniguitin. I'd never visited the Chilcotin. So I went visiting. I didn't ask permission. I didn't announce my arrival. I didn't say I intended a project. I didn't. I went visiting. What I found was what is for me, and I think for everyone who lives there, the most beautiful place on earth. I was utterly and completely blown away. But there was nobody there because I went in August and everybody was hunting and fishing and gathering medicines and berry picking and getting ready for school and doing a million things, but they certainly weren't walking around and ready to talk to a stranger. I talked to a couple of people. As I was leaving, I stopped at the old Lee's Corner before wildfire took it too. And truly, by sheer chance, I bumped into Roger, who wasn't chief at that point. Chief Marilyn Baptiste was serving as chief at that point. Roger's being re-elected to that position a year later. Chief Marilyn said, "Why don't you come and talk to us?" She asked what I was doing there, what were my interests. I went by. She said, "Roger, I always say you should write a book about the title case. You know so much about the title case." Roger said, "Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I should write a book about the title case. When am I going to find time?" And he looked at me. I was an academic, so I guess the assumption was that I had time. We agreed that we figure out how to write kind of a history of the title case. We then interviewed, starting in June 2013, at the time of the second hearings into 12 v. Fish Lake. We continued for a year and a half. At the end of that, I thought, okay, we're up to date on the history of the title case. I can pull this together. We've got a book. And just as I said that, Roger looked at me, very quietly said, "Now it's time for you to talk to the community." And that was the next 9 years of my life. I could still be talking, but we finally had to produce a book. So I was so fortunate that Roger saw beyond what he and I were doing, to something that was huge, that was also random, wonderfully serendipitous, because we didn't tell, so I'm giving you a sense of what you're going to find by the book. We didn't tell people, we didn't have magic questions. This isn't a work of social science research. It isn't an ethnography. It's not objective. You can tell that from speaking. I'm totally on side with the typeface. It was about what people chose to say. And each person who chose to come and talk said whatever they said. And at the end of many years, I saw patterns emerging, and the patterns became the book. We didn't start with the structure of the book. We did start with the structure of the typeface for obvious reasons. The two interface because the evidence that the elders gave in the title case was all the stories of the history, all the stories of genocide, all the stories of unhealed wounds, but also all the stories of the land, the plants, the animals, the traditional way of life. So that's all in the book too. So I'm going to stop there. I understand there's some copies out there on the table. If anybody's interested, happy to sign. If telling your friends about the book is a good segue, that would help too, because what we wanted to do in this book, and I'm speaking here not just for me but for Roger, what we wanted to do was to enter a conversation between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples in this place. The Chilcotin, BC, Western Canada, all of Canada, maybe the world. Roger's in New Zealand today, so Roger's story goes very far. In order to bring such different conversations into contact with each other, one needs to start by listening. The elders' words are the words that they chose to share with you. Now it's up to Saugatuck youth to learn from the elders in the book, to learn their own history, to learn their own language. There's much in the Saugatuck language. But it's up to all of us, those of us in this room who are non-Indigenous people as well as Indigenous, to do the work, not of what I call the fairy dust version of reconciliation, a few platitudes and we feel better, but to do the work of truly educating ourselves, of truly entering the medicine stories. It's hard work, it's painful, it's delightful, it's happy, it's amazing, it's beautiful, and much of it non-Indigenous Canada is totally unaware of. So we offer the book in honor of the elders. And I speak on behalf of the community, of the elders, of my collaborator, Roger, all of us. To you, may the medicine stories change your lives. May they change this country really soon. Thank you.
For sharing that. And one of the things that you said that really stood out is that stories are medicine. And what a great thing to be sharing with our community as we share stories, as we share musical performances, as we share other gifts, that is how we make our world just a little bit better by sharing stories, and that's how we can heal. So we heard from Lorraine. We also have a video recording from Chief Roger Williams. So we will play that now.
Inchlis Nhwachana Chia, Prince George Library, Jeanne Clarke Award, Godail Nan, Nakurin E. So Z Roger William Sadada. Hanigut in Nits Ilineslin. Selkotin Danineslin. I want to take this time to thank you all, the committee, the city, for recognizing us, giving us this award. It's such an honor. Nandit das asaya kayuriti das as nahotani agultin kait andani jalil jatat najekolnek hult ijit nanagul chut igandi das as alya ako Lorraine Weir Shonho Chanel in Professor Helene Desala. Yes, this book is our journey in winning the first Aboriginal title in Supreme Court of Canada, a game changer. It's like sitting around a campfire told by our elders, our leaders, our youth about this amazing journey. Thank you once again.
And that brings us now to our service awards. So those are 2 publication awards, and I'd like to invite Councillor Garth Brazell up to lead us through the service awards.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Garth Brazell. To Jeanne Clarke's family, to Chair Duff, the trustees, the councillors, presidents, to all the writers, to all the readers, the people who love writers, and I guess the people who love readers too. Thank you for coming out today. I'll see if I get the title right. Thank you for the poaching. It's Notorious Georges. And play that. I'll work on it. I want to also take a moment to recognize someone who doesn't get recognition usually at these events, but who does an enormous amount of work for our public library. The leader of all of our staff, our chief librarian, our director, Paul Burry. Where are you, Paul? Back at the back. In addition to the immense work that needs to be done to keep both branches of the library open, the programs, to work with all the staff, Paul is also quietly and very, very deeply committed to social cohesion in Prince George. It's a story that doesn't get told enough, but I keep running into him at these events and saying, oh, it's Paul Burry yet again. So I wanted to take a moment to recognize him. Thank you. So, on to, I'm going to read from notes to get this absolutely right. Because, as you know, we've got 2 different award categories today. The Service Award celebrates outstanding service. Sorry, I'm just going to try to get past the speaker here. Outstanding service, and it's granted to an individual or an organization for significant contributions to the preservation and promotion of local history. So our Service Award winners are the people who contribute to the preservation of local history through their daily lives, through their dedicated efforts over decades, their stories, and their artistic creations. Past winners of the Service Award include Chuck Chin, include Kim Gucci, Clarence Woodrow, Elder Edie Frederick and Jennifer Piggin, Trell Morrow, Mary Gucci and Exploration Place, and Kent Sedgwick. Pretty impressive list. That's distinguished recipients. This year, we have the honor of celebrating the achievements of multiple Service Award winners. Our first award winner is linguist and UNBC Professor Bill Poser. He's being recognized for his dedication to the documentation, preservation, and revitalization of the Mi'kmaq language.
For over 30 years, Bill has devoted himself to researching and supporting Tagalog and related Athabascan languages. His work includes the creation of textbooks, dictionaries, teaching materials, and publicly available online resources, complete with clickable audio, and all of these have become invaluable tools for both learners and teachers. His commitment to accessibility has opened doors for countless community members who want to reconnect with their language. Bill's collaborated extensively with speakers across multiple Tagalog dialects, including Lele, Nakalun, Sekuz, and Ocacho, and he's currently contributing to efforts with the Sakani language as well. He's also carefully preserved local histories of the languages in his documentation. His dedication to thorough documentation has resulted in multiple linguistic databases, thousands of audio recordings, and the careful recording of elders, ensuring that their voices and knowledge will be preserved for generations to come. Beyond his research and resource development, Bill's also a devoted educator. He's taught Tagalog at the tertiary level, sharing both linguistic knowledge and cultural respect with adult learners, future teachers, and academic audiences. Bill's contributions have had a profound and lasting impact on Indigenous language work, our region and beyond, and we are pleased to present him with the 2026 Jeanne Clarke Service Award. I invite Bill to come forward to receive his award and share his remarks with us.
Well, thank you. I don't have to say too much. It's obviously pretty much everything. I'll exaggerate a little bit. The indigenous languages of our region are so fascinating that I'm not sure I should be getting an award for having had the privilege of studying them. I should say that I came to this work by accident. The first accident was when I was a university student. I started my academic life as a mathematician. I was going to be a numbers theorist. I still, in fact, know the unsolved problem that I would like to solve. Maybe I should take a picture. I hold it like this. I got diverted into linguistics. Here? Okay. I got diverted into linguistics, but my training and early academic work was focused on phonology and phonetics, which are aspects of the study of the sound systems of languages, including laboratory aspect. I did a lot of digital signal processing and that sort of thing. I worked on my dissertation at Bell Labs. My only corporate loyalty, they paid me to use their facilities to do my research. Wonderful thing. And the languages I focused on were those of Northeast Asia, especially Japanese, on which I wrote my doctoral dissertation. And then one day in 1986, I was visiting a friend at the University of Arizona in Tucson, and she got up to go to the bathroom or something, and I picked up a journal that was lying on her desk, and it read a paper, one of the very few things that had been published about carrying Dake. And for theoretical reasons, that piqued my interest. The way it described the prosodic system of Dake was, I can't explain now, but it said that Dake had properties that I thought that there might be languages that were like that, and my dissertation advisor thought that that was impossible, and so it was quite interesting to see this. But it was also the kind of thing that you have to take with a grain of salt, and so I wanted to find out if it was really true. And eventually I came up here to do research on that particular aspect of the language. And then my work on the language broadened when Carrier Sakani Tribal Council Chief Late Justa Monk asked me to work on a university curriculum. And that was because there was a student from Hosted Nation, his dad, who was a UBC student, and she had to satisfy a language requirement. And she didn't like French and wasn't doing very well at it. She said, why can't I use my language? And the answer from UBC was that in theory she could, but she couldn't do it unless they had an approved curriculum, to test it. And so my initial job was to write that curriculum, to develop a curriculum that could be used for that purpose. Of course, that takes a long time, and she eventually managed to get through French and graduate before that happened. But that's how I got into working on the language in a broader way. The people who helped are too numerous to name, so I'll just mention a few. And I should say, unfortunately, the great majority of people are no longer with us. In the beginning, in addition to Deuce the Monk, like Rose Pierre, still living Archie Patrick provided, let's call it political logistical support. And over the years, also Marlene Erickson and Pete Erickson and Grand Chief Edward John. More recently, my co-instructor, Marion Lessard, she just got married, Marion Erickson, you know her, has been a great help. I've worked with many, dozens and dozens of fluent speakers, Carrier, also Sakani, and even a little bit of Kate Son. But Robert Hansen, Mary John Sr., Russell Alec, and Charlie Joseph, who's sitting back there, have been particularly important. And here in Big Legion Territory, Mary Gucci, Josie Paul, and her daughter, Amy Frederick. I think I shouldn't go on too long. You probably want to maybe listen to Mike play or something. But I should say that although this award is for history and documentation of our indigenous languages is part of our history, it's important to keep in mind that the reason that we do this is also forward-looking in the hope that the languages will remain alive. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill, and congratulations. This year, we're also pleased to be able to recognize the work of Ray Olson and Linda Campbell, affectionately known as the Train Ladies. Linda and Ray are being honored for their work hosting train trips along the East Line Railway, telling the stories of towns and communities along the route, including Longworth, Sinclair Mills, Luce, Endako, Dome Creek, and Penny. Ray's the author of 3 historical books, From the Elbow to Laos and Beyond, Ghost Towns on the East Line, and Hutton, a historical perspective. The idea for the train trips first occurred to Linda when she attended a talk at building some suspense at the Central BC Railway and Forestry Museum in 2020, and she heard Olson sharing stories of life on the East Line, days gone by. As outlined in a Prince George Citizen article in 2024, train passengers are treated to the highlights and lowlights of pioneer living between 1914, when the Grand Trunk Pacific Railway came through the area, and the mid-1960s, when time finally caught up with the East Line communities and modern conveniences like roads were built to connect to the outside world. Ray and Linda's train trips are a great way for people in our community to get out and explore, to learn more about the history of our region, and we thank them both for their years of commitment to sharing these stories with us. Now, Ray's unable to join us in person today, but he's recorded a video that we'll share with everyone. First, however, I'd like you to join me in welcoming Linda Campbell to the front to accept the 2026 Jeanne Clarke Service Award.
Hello, everybody. Hi, everybody. I just want to thank my family and friends and co-workers and people that have lived in Prince George for ages, because that's what I've done. has lived here for ages, and I was just thinking as Merle Gordon walked in, I think right here is probably where Merle played baseball way back when, and the river came around and when times were a lot different. So just a little bit about myself and why I'm interested in doing things like this. I am not an academic. I haven't been doing this for decades. It kind of came across me about 5 years ago. But certainly, I think what kind of hid itself away for a while is that I love trains. And I'm here because my parents, John and Jessie Smith, very difficult names to think about, John Smith, came here from Woodcock, British Columbia. I don't know if you've driven the train up towards Prince Rupert, but it's a very tiny spot with an airstrip, actually, that was built just probably during World War II or probably before it, in case we were bombed. Anyways, Dad was a telegraph officer there, and they lived in, telegraph worker, I think he described himself. They lived in a little railway house, and Mom always said that was the best years of their life. When my two brothers were there, I wasn't born yet, so I guess I wasn't destined to be one of the best years of their life. Anyways, I love that. I went to Prince Rupert and was born in Prince Rupert, and then Dad came down to Prince George in 1951. And we, if you know where Capabilities is now, right by the railway tracks, there were 3 little railway houses there, and we rented those for about 14 years. And that was my life down by the tracks, and it was wonderful. It's sad to see it now, but there's always a future, and it was wonderful back then with just different things, meeting Phyllis Seymour. I remember Granny Seymour, I remember Yukon Joe, just these wonderful people in Prince George that made us what it was when times were different. I remember the ice rink, I guess falling down with the snow. I remember the library when it was over at the senior center on 4th Avenue. Times were a lot different. They were lovely. Not once when I lived there did I ever feel endangered. We basically, Mom and Dad, along with everybody else, said, go out and play, and when the 9 o'clock siren goes, come on back in. And that's what we did. And they were really great times with a lot of houses on 2nd Avenue, the Bartoletti Taylors, the, can't remember the names, but to do with the laundry services, and Pat's News, and the Purple Lantern, and importantly, too, the Cheetah Tongue Society. The building is still there. I don't know if you remember. Yet I see the sign is now down, but right around today or yesterday or tomorrow, we would have the Dragon Parade coming down to celebrate New Year's. So it's very culturally unique. Anyways, they were really, really good times. My mom and I went on a train trip because Dad got free passes, and we went to Hamilton to visit an uncle. And the only next time I went on a train trip was when I met my husband, Brian Campbell, I think probably grade 12. And that was before the road was built out to McBride, and we took the train out there to play basketball. And so that was kind of cool. And then no interest at all in trains until grandchildren came along, and Sam and Sarah have been very patient over there during these presentations. And I thought a train trip to St. Clair Mills would be cool. And then somebody else said they'd like to do that, so we started on train trips called the Grammy Train. And from there, it's just progressed to having seniors, having young children, having families. Ray was, I'm so sad that he's not here today, because what he offers on the trips and in the communities of Dome Creek, St. Clair Mills, not in Daco, it is out west. But Ray has lived out there. He breathes it. He tells wonderful stories, and it really is worthwhile listening to Ray. He was just at the Legion the other day doing a presentation. And on these trips, wonderful things happen, I believe. We met, there's a girl here named Grace who came up to me on one of the trips and asked if I needed help, and she helped me today just Amazingly, Morris has come along and told interesting stories. I met Robert Byrd on a train and learned about our history and his history from way back until Hudson's Bay War times. And there was a Logan Bishop that came along, just a young fellow, and I said, Logan, why are you interested in trains? And he said, because I want to find out where my family's from. They were Freiras, they came from Portugal, they worked in Giscombe, and Ray was able to come and talk to Logan because he worked with his grandparents. Just amazing times like that, which are really continuing along on these trips. Three ladies from, maybe it was Penny, but they brought the ashes of their brother and they buried them alongside the Hansard Bridge, which I never even knew existed. And I've learned so much about the names of all the communities along there. I think I can name them now. It's taken me 5 years to do that. But it starts at Gorman Flats and the Denicolas, and those of you from Prince George that remember the little car on top of the roof up in Pineview, those were Denicola. That's a Denicola car. All these things make sense now when I do these trips. Oh, that's what that is, or that's why. And it's fun. And I describe them as fun, friendly, and interesting, and they continue to be so, and hopefully we'll keep doing them for this reason. Anyways, thank you, everybody. I really appreciate the honor. This isn't as scary as watching that hockey game this morning.
Good afternoon. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Ray Olson. I would like to express my thanks for being accepted as a co-recipient for this prestigious award. I would also like to congratulate Linda for being a co-recipient as well. Linda and I have been presenting local history since 2017. It's been a good journey. Being acknowledged for doing something that is enjoyable is an honor and most gratifying. I have documented local history in 3 books I have published and hosted presentations in a number of venues for over 20 years. Interest in the history of this area is constantly demonstrated by the response to the train trips, the oral presentation, and slideshows. 3 of the most popular venues are Sinclair Mills, Longworth, and Dome Creek. Dome Creek is an hour-and-a-half drive out of Prince George. On one occasion, a lady from Edmond brought the ashes of her deceased son to be spread along the Fraser River at Hansard. He had been born at that location in a caboose in the 1960s. Quite often, an individual is hoping to learn about a family member who lived or worked in the area. When we can make those connections, it is very heartwarming. One of the most poignant experiences for me was when a lady phoned me from the United States and inquired if I had ever came across her mother's name, which I hadn't. She said her mother had worked for Carmen Elliott. Carmen Elliott was a madam who operated 2 brothels in Prince George, one in the 1200 block of 2nd Avenue and the other at the west end of 3rd Avenue. The brothels were shut down in 1957. I did not ask the lady in what capacity her mother was employed. I hope this video stays in-house. If a Republican is aware of this award, it may well be another one claimed by Donald Trump. Thank you and have a good day.
Thank you and congratulations to the recipients. I'll return the floor to our chair, Trustee Anna Duff.
Thank you, everyone, and What a great afternoon this has been of listening and learning. And that is what is so important for us to do for history, right? Like, what a great way for us to spend 2 hours on a snowy Sunday afternoon to learn more about this place that we call home, this place maybe that we're visiting to, but also to learn more about our neighbors. And a few things have kind of stood out to me today as we were going through this and hearing all the remarks. And one of them is just during one of the nominees' videos, and then he said that we're really just made up of ordinary people trying to do our best, right? And that is what is such a joy to celebrate, and it is so true. And sometimes you think you have a skill, you have an interest, and how can you share that with people because you enjoy it, and when you're passionate about something, that really carries through. So for all those people that think that they're ordinary, I'm sure you have something extraordinary in you, and please do share that with others. And one of the ways that we are able to share is through organizations. Sometimes it's hard to bring people together or to have the means to bring people together. Like Councillor Griselle mentioned, there's a lot of staff from the Prince George Public Library that go into this work. And so sometimes there really is that balance of people doing great things, but needing an organization to provide some support. And today was really unique that we had nominees and winners in both categories that were either retired or work at UNBC. And so what a great kind of acknowledgement, kind of subtle, not planned by the local history committee or those that were submitting nominations, but what a way to acknowledge the really strong role that UNBC is having in Northern BC, very appropriately named as an organization and an institution, but also kind of legitimizing the history of what we're going through, what we're learning, and what we're publishing. So there's a lot here, but the one other thought that I had is just that stories are medicine. And if we are good people, ordinary people doing our best things, why not keep on sharing stories with other people? And that's how we make kind of our corner of this world of Northern BC just a little bit healthier, a little bit more welcoming. And that is wonderful. So thank you all for spending your afternoon with us, for celebrating our nominees and our award winners. And thank you to all the library staff who put this on. And it has been a great joy to share this with you. So with that, I will bid you adieu. Thank you, and drive safe out there.